Hello, Michael here. Welcome. Thanks for joining me. As always, if you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also, below you'll find a description of my online store called Attention Bazaar and a link for getting there. Please come and browse and see if you don't find something that is right for you. Maybe just hits the spot. Okay, today's topic is a big one, and I'm going to only be able to do broad brushstrokes, but I hope these broad brushstrokes will provide a framework for your further reflections. And the topic is one of my slogans, as usual, and the slogan just goes, know, love, develop, and transcend yourself. Know, love, develop, transcend yourself. Since the slogans are aimed at personal development, it seems like a good idea to give some idea of what that entails. What do we have to do to develop ourselves? Develop is one word in the of four. So let me start at the beginning here with know. The first step is to just become familiar with ourselves, to have self-reflected and introspected enough to have some idea of how we're made. What are our parts? And as usual, and this is something that you'll hear again and again, hopefully from different angles, with different possibilities for understanding and practice. The four main ways we can know ourselves are through body, mind, relationships, and environment. So what does it mean to know our body? Well, it means being familiar with our actual shape, to notice how we look, to notice our weight, to notice our energy level, to notice how flexible or stiff we are, to notice where we hold tension, where we have pain, where we have a feeling of comfort and ease. And that requires paying attention to the sensations in our body. Pay attention when we're just sitting and doing nothing. Pay attention when we're active. It's good to know ourselves in terms of knowing injuries that we've had that may make us vulnerable to certain activities. It's good to know roughly how much weight we can lift in case we have a bad back. It's good to know if we're allergic to something, so we can avoid it. It's good to know if we have a deficiency in some nutrient, so we can seek it out. It's good to know what we're capable of physically and what we're not capable of, and to know where the threshold is. What are things we can do easily? What are things we simply can't do? What are things that we might be able to do? It's good to know our health, medical situation. Good to know your dental health. Good to know your bowel health. It would have been good for me if I had given more attention to my bowel health a year ago. I noticed but tended to ignore certain things like constipation and low energy. And by the time I actually looked into it, was diagnosed with stage 3B colon cancer. Perhaps if I had attended to it sooner, I would have caught it sooner. So there's a variety of ways we can pay attention to our body, its health and its well-being, but also our sensations in our body. And then it goes for our hearing and our sight. Do we notice how well those parts of our body are functioning? Do we need glasses? Do we need a hearing aid? Okay, so we can know ourselves in terms of body. Mind. What can we know about our own mind? Well, we can know what our beliefs are if we pause long enough to identify them. We can know what our values are, what's important. We can clarify that. We can know where we stand on different issues. We can know what we know and know about the things that we don't know. We might know our personality style. We might do a personality inventory or questionnaire. One that I have found useful is called the Big Five. These are 5 personality traits: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and eroticism. So we might learn about that. We might go the Myers-Briggs route and learn about how that system would see us in terms of how we're made up psychologically. We can begin to identify blind spots in what we aren't aware of or what we don't know about. Identify our biases, the mental models that we use to frame our reality and our experience. We can know what we respond to in terms of music, art, or literature, or film. We can know our tastes. Again, broad brushstrokes, and I'm just giving some examples. Hopefully, as I'm naming some, you'll come up with your own examples of ways that you can know yourself psychologically or on the level of mind. Body, mind, relationships. So what can we know about ourselves in terms of relationship? We can know our general style. For instance, do we tend to be passive, aggressive, or assertive in our relationships? If you know anything about attachment style, perhaps you can identify your basic attitude toward a relationship. Are you anxious? Are you avoidant? Are you secure? How does that style of relationship relate to your history of relationships? Have you considered the relationships in your family, reflected on those, on what role you played or what role other people's played, and how this is giving a shape to your life? We can pay attention to how we speak, our actual voice, our facility with language. We can pay attention to what our verbal or our spoken and written skills are like, if we're good at one or the other. What else about relationships? We could know our language of love, if you've heard about that. Do you prefer to receive love in the form of affection, in terms of gifts, in terms of quality time spent together, in terms of service, and what's the last one? Did I say physical affection? Well, there's 5 of them. If I missed one, you can look it up. But we have different ways that we like to receive love and give love. And are you familiar with what your preferences are? Again, just a handful of examples of the ways we could know ourselves in terms of relationship. Okay, body, mind, relationships, and environment. what can we know about ourselves in terms of environment? We can know what environments we feel comfortable and safe in, and which environments make us feel uncomfortable or unsafe, which environments really rejuvenate us and which drain us, whether it's an interior space or the outdoors. We can know something about ourselves in terms of not just how an environment makes us feel, but how we interact with the environment. Do we take care of our environment? Do we tend to keep our homes neat, orderly, and clean, and provisioned? Or do we neglect our homes? What do we find beautiful? Do we enjoy a minimalist style, or do we like something more lavish and full of things and color? Okay, again, broad brushstrokes. These are the ways we can know ourselves. And without reiterating all of these details, if you hold the examples that I've given so far in mind, when we move on to love and develop, these are the more precise ways to look at those two as well. So love. So we're going to know ourselves, just kind of take stock of who we are and how we're made. Then we're going to regard ourselves somehow. We're going to like that. We're going to not like that. What's going to be our attitude? When I first came up with the slogan, instead of love, I had the word accept. And I decided to replace it with the word love. Accept is a pretty good word, but it has connotations that I didn't want to be stuck with. Love, to me, is more inclusive. It's broader. And the reason I chose it is because we're not going to want to accept everything we know about ourselves. Some of it may be things that we ought to accept. On some basic level, we should accept that we are who we are. We should start where we are and acknowledge it and not plummet into shame about who we are. So on that level, we should accept ourselves. But to love ourselves means that we also acknowledge the things about ourselves that aren't exactly the way we'd like to be. That there's something aspirational or inspirational about love. Love is nurturing and forgiving and kind and warm. When we think of self-love as similar or the same thing as loving another person. I'm going to assume that you have loved somebody in your life, and that in that love there was a real warm feeling. There was a kindness and a softness and a gentleness and a willingness to show up and be supportive for that person. And that's part of love, part of self-love. The other part of self-love is more, in a sense, almost parental. It's presenting challenges and having expectations and saying, you can do better. Sometimes self-love, metaphorically, and I mean this in the best way, to love ourselves is to give ourselves a kick in the ass, right? It's to say, no, that's not okay. This is not the way you want to be, and you can do better. I don't think that violates the notion of self-love, and I think a notion of self-love that doesn't include that is half of the story, not the full story. So, loving ourselves. It's how we regard what it is we come to know about ourselves. Again, broad brushstrokes. So I'll move on to develop. So as we know and love ourselves, we will recognize that there are parts of us that we'd like to modify, we'd like to improve. We might like to eliminate some kinds of behaviors. We want to be better. We aspire to be the best we can be. So this is the development part. And this requires effort, requires discipline. It means engaging in practices. It means doing things for our body, our mind, our relationships, and our environment that move us from where we are to where we truly desire to be. We may need to take care of our body in certain ways: exercise, diet, sleep. It may be that in relationships we need to learn how to set boundaries, or we may need to learn how to ask for what we want, or we may need to learn how to listen better and cultivate empathy for others. And the level of mind, maybe there's books we need to read, courses we need to take. Maybe there's ways we need to train our attention so that we can focus on things better. Maybe we need to keep a journal. Maybe we need to go to therapy and explore our mind with another person. So the development part is about all of the practices, disciplines, and tasks and effort that we put in to becoming, not just accepting ourselves as we are and being as we are, but becoming who we can become. Because our self is not a static thing. We to know and love ourselves. Well, that's not just like a rock sitting in the meadow that you look at and understand. It's moving, it's changing, it's morphing, and you have a hand in where it goes. That's the development part. Okay, so know, love, develop, transcend. Transcend yourself. What does that mean? Well, I want to first acknowledge a principle within integral theory, which is the development is a process of transcending but including. So by transcending oneself, I don't mean to say that knowing, loving, and developing oneself is no longer happening, but it's happening within a bigger context. A bigger context. For Buddhists, well, let me say this. Most spiritual disciplines, paths that I'm aware of aim at self-transcendence, getting beyond the ego, being more unified with the rest of existence, overcoming greed, selfishness, and self-preoccupation. This is part of a spiritual path. For Buddhists, transcending the self actually means recognizing, having a realization that the very idea and experience of the self is an illusion. The self doesn't actually really exist. It's a fabrication. So I'm not going to go down that road, but what I do want to say about transcending the self is that if we take the time to discover what we love and care about deeply, and we pursue that completely, and I have a video on that, we get out of our own way. We're no longer a preoccupation. The idea of self-esteem and status and a preoccupation not only with how we think about ourselves, but with how other people see us, becomes, in a sense, uninteresting or irrelevant. It's not important anymore. It's living life isn't simply about being able to sit back and look at how gloriously wonderful we are and overcome low self-esteem and feel confidence and yay, look at me. I'm sorry to make fun of that. There's a place for developing all of that. What I'm saying is there's a place where we leave that behind. It's not an issue anymore. We're in a greater field of experience with greater things that our attention is focused on, like what we love and care about. And we're so absorbed in pursuing that we forget about ourselves. Literally, we forget about ourselves. If somebody doesn't like what we do or we make a mistake, it's not about, oh, shame on me, and I should be kind to myself and forgive myself for that and all of that stuff, which there's a place for that. It's, okay, how can I fix this? How can I make this better so that I'm more fully, more completely able to give myself to the thing I'm loving and caring about that's beyond me. It's about serving a purpose beyond one's own ego. What can I say about this? Gosh. On the one hand, this is terrifying. Terrifying to not have a grip on ourself and keep stock of ourself, to surrender into some greater, vast space of interest. Terrifying. On the other hand, completely liberating. Completely liberating. I think that this is where self-development ultimately can go. It's not about stopping at the level of self-development. It's about getting beyond the self. Okay. How was that? Did you get a sense of these 4 things in broad terms? Knowing, loving, developing, transcending yourself. My suggestion is hold that in mind. Hold it lightly. Consider it. To keep dipping back, like I said, transcend and include. There's always more to learn about yourself. There's always further ways to love yourself. There's always further ways to develop yourself. And there's always times when we need to return to that space beyond ourselves because we've forgotten it. So again, at the end of my videos, I make a wish, because if, again, you've listened this far, you deserve my good wishes. So may you come to know yourself more and more. May your heart and your toughness grow so that you can love yourself completely. May you be inspired and excited and eager to engage in whatever practices and disciplines are needed to develop yourself for the sake of what you love and care about. And may you find yourself in that space beyond yourself where you've forgotten yourself and you're immersed in your love of whatever it is. Okay, that's it. Be well. Toodaloo.